Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, leading the country's most right-wing government ever, pledged on to press ahead with policies that have irked critics at home and abroad. Now, one such policy is the overhaul of the country's judicial system, which can potentially weaken the Supreme Court. In a speech in Jerusalem, Netanyahu appeared to back his Justice Minister Yair Levin. Netanyahu vowed to implement reforms that will ensure the proper balance between the three branches of the government.
נעשה רוויזיה במשילות. קיבלנו מנדט מובהק מהציבור בהקשר זה, להיאבק בפורעי חוק, ונעשה זאת בלא מורא. ננקוט צעדים שיחזקו את הביטחון האישי בכל רחבי המדינה, ואני אתן גיבוי ככל שדרוש להשיג את היעד הזה. בד בבד נחיל רפורמות שיבטיחו את האיזון הנכון בין שלוש הרשויות.
Netanyahu spoke shortly after Levin unveiled the new government's long-promised overhaul of the judicial system. The proposals call for a series of sweeping changes aimed at curbing the powers of the judiciary. These include allowing lawmakers to pass laws that the High Court has struck down and effectively deemed unconstitutional. Levin also proposed that politicians play a greater role in the appointment of Supreme Court judges and that ministers appoint their own legal advisors instead of using independent professionals. The new Justice Minister also laid out a law that would empower Israel's 120-member parliament to override Supreme Court decisions with a simple majority of 61 votes. Critics have accused the government of declaring a war against the legal system. They say that the plan will upend Israel's system of checks and balances and undermine its democratic institutions, as it gives absolute powers to the government. Justice Minister Yair Levin is a long-time critic of the Supreme Court. He presented his plan a day before the justices are to debate a controversial new law passed by the government. The new legislation allows a politician convicted of tax offences to serve as the cabinet minister. Since being indicted on corruption charges, Netanyahu has campaigned against the justice system. He denies all charges and presents himself to be a victim of a witch hunt orchestrated by hostile media, police and prosecutors. Levin said his plan is not connected in any way to Netanyahu's trial. Moving on now, for more on this, political commentator Dr. Hadas Cohen is joining us live from Oklahoma, United States. Thank you so much for joining us. How do you assess the overhaul of the judicial system in the country?
Terrible, to put it simply, also as a legal scholar. Yeah, basically what they are trying to do out of and out of false claims that the public has no faith in the judicial system, they want to take away that power from the Supreme Court to override decisions that are legislated or laws that are legislated by the Israeli parliament, and basically give the political electorate, the politicians that were elected, the right to decide whatever they want based on a majority of one person. So if the Israeli parliament has 120 members, 61 members can pass a law that will decide that people with blue eyes will have to pay 20% more taxes, and the Supreme Court will not be able to assist them, and there will be no permission basically to the Supreme Court to intervene on behalf of the basic laws that Israel has instead of a constitution. So yes, me and many are looking at these attempts to do an overhaul of the Israeli democratic essence with horror.
Absolutely. As you just mentioned, the new Justice Minister has also laid out a law that would empower Israel's 120-member parliament to override Supreme Court decisions, simple majority of 61 votes needed here. So what can you tell us of the practical implications, and to what extent does this change the judicial system and structure?
Well, it just gives the Israeli parliament and anyone and any party that manages to form a government ultimate power. with basically no ability to, nothing to stop it. Israel doesn't really have a constitution. It has basic laws that, as we can see, it's not a big problem to override the protections that they give. So it doesn't have a regular checks and balance systems as other countries do. So what this government wants to do is to do away with any checks and balances, and that any elected government will be able to do as it wishes. And this is basically, the idea is to usher the way in, both for Netanyahu, or rather out of his corruption trial. And the idea is also to usher in Aryeh Deri, who is the leader of the ultra-Orthodox Shas party. And he was basically on probation. What the Israeli parliament last month changed was also a law that would now allow somebody who is on probation to serve as a cabinet minister. And the whole idea behind it is basically to weaken the judicial system in order for these two politicians to, one, avoid the rule of law, that's Netanyahu, and the other one, become a very high-ranking minister, even though he has sat in jail. So again, this is basically doing away with the essence of Israeli democracy.
Right. Dr. Cohen, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast with all your insights on this.
Of course, my pleasure.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.